So welcome on this very snowy evening to Konstakademin. My name is Lizzie Shea. I'm the director of Jewish culture in Sweden, Judisk kultur i Sverige. And we are extremely pleased to have with us this evening Robert Menasse on our special J-Talks program. It's Robert's first visit to us anyway at Judisk kultur, and we are extremely happy to have him with us on a talk about Europe, his vision, his ideas, and some Jewish content as well. I will leave the stage to Svante Weyler, who is a regular with us. Svante is a journalist and an author, and you were even Robert's publisher, right?
I was, yes.
Yes, so you know each other very well. So thank you for coming. After this talk, we will have a reception outside. Please join us for a glass of wine and some refreshments, or you can continue the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lizzie, and welcome to Stockholm. Welcome to Stockholm. This is your first visit in Stockholm as well?
Yes.
Yes. I should have invited you in connection with this, the publication of this novel. We know each other since...
Yes, I was waiting for this invitation, but she never came. Yeah.
Well, that's email. You can never trust it. I'll just present you in Swedish shortly. We will talk in English. You don't have to hear my bad German or his wonderful Austrian. So we will connect in this Euro English. And I'll just make a short presentation of you before we start. And I'll do that in Swedish. Robert är en av de främsta tyskspråkiga författarna idag, född i Österrike, i Wien 1954, uppvuxen där. Och en liten by hos Oma nära den tjeckiska gränsen, så nära så att man kunde, berätta när det går, cykla och se till att man inte föll in i kommunismen. Och sen så var det ganska fascinerande med vakterna där också. Liksom född in i ett europeiskt dilemma. Debuterade efter studier i slutet på 80-talet. Skrivit en rad romaner, många med judiskt tema. Det stora första genombrottet kom med utdrivningen ur helvetet i Vertreibung aus der Hölle 2001, som översattes till en rad språk och betraktas som ett sorts genombrott. Men det riktigt stora genombrottet kom i den här romanen 2017, Die Hauptstadt, huvudstaden. Som inte bara var ett genombrott i betydelsen att den fick en massa läsare och fick det finaste tyska litterära priset, Deutsche Buchpreis, som betyder många 100 000 sålda exemplar. Den är också på sätt och vis lite unik. Den får liv i något så strukturellt dött som EU-kommissionen. Det är en roman som nästan helt och hållet utspelar sig i EU-kommissionen. Och man behöver inte vara en kännare av EU-kommissionen för att förstå vilken kraftsamling eller kraftansträngning måste vara för liv i den. En underbart rolig och skarp roman. Och sen kom i fjol fortsättningen som heter Die Erweiterung, utvidgningen. Ungefär det tristaste romannamnet man kan tänka sig, och bakom det rymmer en spännande historia om varför man i EU vill till varje pris hindra Albanien för att komma in. Det är den korta versionen av 643 sidor. Vi kommer in på en lite längre version. I just told them that you have been writing these two novels on European issues, but not just on European issues, but on European institutions. Why are you so fascinated by European institutions?
First, let me say that I'm confused now because
you trying to understand what I was saying.
No, yes. Your introduction sounded so dramatic that I hope that I can fulfill what you promised, or seemed to promise. Why I am interested in European politics and European institutions, it's a simple reason. It's the basic of our contemporary life. what happens there in these institutions, what they decide. They made the basic conditions of our daily life in which we try to found our happiness, or in which we try to make our lives, and where we are not able to make it as we want it, and the decisions and the blockades in the European Union are the fundament of our daily life. And a novel, in my understanding, is nothing else than to tell in which conditions we live in our times, in a way that contemporaries are recognizing themselves and later generations can understand us. And this is what every novel in history of novel did. And I'm very, very much surprised every time when I have a public presentation of one of my novels to get this question.
Well, the basic reason must be you didn't meet so many other writers doing research for a novel when you stayed in Brussels.
Yeah, no, I am the number one.
Wasn't a lot of poets running through the corridors?
No, this is very
You were
astonishing.
alone there.
Yes, I'm the number one in the field of one.
Yeah. Then you're either the smartest or the stupidest, because that's when you're.
No, the problem is that normally writers learn to reflect their national situation. And they not realized yet that we are living in a post-national situation, in a post-national development. What is the European Union? For example, a German novelist is trying to tell the story, how are people living and making their life, and what is going on with them in a situation where two German countries with different political systems are trying to unify. Yeah? It is a radical political theme. And the literary critics in Germany, who find this absolutely normal, ask me, why are you interested in political themes?
They think it's an easy question for them.
But it's easy, I'm not a German. So I look farther and at the same time more concretely on my life situation. And I'm European, I'm Viennese, and I know that what happens in my life happens under the conditions of a situation which my parents and my grandparents and my great-grandparents didn't imagine even. Single market, common currency, no borders, yeah? and a law situation which is common for 26 European states. Yeah? Ask your grandfather. Could you imagine to live in a situation in which 26 European states live under the same law? He will say no. And therefore, in the time of your grandfather, completely different novels were written.
How much did your disinterest in national issues, in Austrian issues, how much had that to do with your Jewish identity, if anything?
I guess I don't have a Jewish identity beside my Jewish identity as a cultural identity.
Oh, well, yeah. It's your choice.
I have no We
saw that.
Yeah. But I'm living in Vienna in the Jewish district. because of my grandparents were already living there and so on. And in this district, the number of Orthodox Jews is growing and growing and growing, because for me, for example, I have one daughter. The neighbors, an Orthodox Jewish family, has 6 children, and this is more or less the situation. You can generalize it. Yeah? But you know that Jewish people, Orthodox or cultural Jews, are called homeless people.
Cosmopolitans.
Cosmopolitans. And
Vaterlandslose.
Vaterlandslose, exactly. And it was, in a historical situation, it was the worst thing you could say about a person.
But for you, it would be something positive, being called Vaterlandslose.
I don't know now the word in English, the difference between Vaterland and Heimat.
That's difficult. That's difficult. Let's say it's complicated and let everybody contemplate on that difference.
I know where I am at home. Yeah? I'm at home, for example, in Vienna. And in the surroundings of Vienna, in the countryside of Vienna, where I have a house on the Czech border, by the way. And there I understand mentality, there I understand certain sounds in the language and in the discussions of people. There I have a specific sentiment in certain light conditions or colors or smells. But this is completely different to Tyrol, and Tyrol is part of the Austrian nation, and I never understood the concept of national identity. If I go to Tyrol, it might be beautiful. I don't understand how you can live looking all your lifetime against a mountain. It's difficult for me to understand, but people do there. Yeah? So, and they have the same passport and the same national identity. I can have friends there, but I don't feel at home there. And I can have friends in the Alentejo of Portugal, I can have friends at the Peloponnese, and the people there have different passports. So for me, to be at home means the place where I grew up, the region in which I understand the things, and where I become much easier completely furious. Because it touches me more. Right? Things which happen, for example, in Styria, I don't care, I couldn't care less. The same thing happening in Vienna, I get furious because there it touches me. So how can you combine this feeling of living with a national identity? It doesn't exist. And therefore, I'm so interested in Austrian history. We, as I can call me a Jew, I know that Jews were the biggest and greatest Austrian patriots in the Habsburg Empire. Yeah? And
Why? Why were they so patriotic towards the empire?
Because in the Habsburg Empire they had a homeland. They had a homeland in a constellation where it wasn't important if you are of a certain nation, of a certain language, and so on. And at the same time, I'm very interested in the succeeding of the European project because it promised me the same. It promised me live a life in a legal state, in a democratic legal state in which it's not important to say I am and then a certain national identity.
The first novel called Die Hauptstadt, huvudstaden, it's a complex plot and there's several characters, 10, 12
Life
characters.
is complex.
As Europe. One civil servant gets an idea. Why don't we take our history seriously and our heritage seriously and make Auschwitz the new capital of Europe? And his boss, a woman with her mind elsewhere, she wants to do a career getting away from the cultural section of the European Union, which is the worst place for a woman with ambitions. So she doesn't really listen so carefully to this guy and lets his idea develop. And it grows and grows. And suddenly the European Commission is confronted with a serious idea of making Auschwitz the new capital of Europe. Where did you get this idea from?
I wonder why you can be surprised that a novelist and poet has fantasy.
So you made it up. Then why did you stay with this idea?
No, but this idea has an inner logic. Europe, the European Union, has no capital. That's a fact. Brussels, which is called capital of the European Union, is not allowed to call itself a capital because the capitals of the other nation states which are member of the European Union don't allow the capital of another nation state to call itself capital. This is the European situation. So if you want to have a capital in the European Union, it would have to be a capital which was not before a national capital. So, and then I thought, okay, we could construct a European and build up a European capital on the Green Lawn in the middle of Europe.
Brasilia.
Like Brasilia, exactly. Yeah. And then I looked at the map, and there are very, very little chances to do that, especially in the middle of Europe. And then I thought, Auschwitz is the solution because the European Union as a project started as a consequence of Auschwitz. Never again, peace in Europe, right and law based on human rights and all these things. It was a consequence of the experience of the nationalism which led to the most criminal wars in history. And Auschwitz is the metaphor for it. It is the synonym. It's the example. And so I thought, if you build a European capital there, you build it with the deep root of the sense of the European Union, the historical root. At the same time, this Auschwitz as a city is nothing. It's a couple of ugly houses, yeah, and poor houses. And if you then there build, like Brasilia, a new modern capital of the future, a capital which shows what the European Union is able to do, a radical future city. So you have the future and the history on the same place, and nobody can say, I've forgotten it. And nobody can say, I've forgotten the history, and nobody can say, I have forgotten what is the deal of the European Union. Where do we want to come yeah? And it would be the logic solution. And it's absolutely clear it never will happen. And so I'm a member of the team of thousands and thousands of people in history which had great ideas which never happened.
The novel failed, or the idea fails in the novel, obviously.
Yeah.
But have you ever confronted any actual European Commission employee with the idea? Say, what would you say if we made it? Have you talked to anybody?
Yes, I had.
What do they say? Do they just laugh? Or
Listen, I lived 4 years in Brussels to write this novel and to get a feeling what is going on in the institutions and so on. And I made friendship with a lot of civil servants of the, especially of the Commission, and I told them the idea, and some of them were very, very interested. And one made a contact to an architect, and he said, "Let's plan it as an art project. Yeah, let's try to construct it on the paper, and then, as architects do, in what is the word, in a simulation." Yeah? And I was very, very happy with this, and I said, "This is wonderful, and let's see what will happen when we make an exhibition." And at this moment, the guy died.
Oh, so it's still just an idea.
The heart is the problem.
You lived there 4 years, and you met a lot of commissioners, and you must have met 1 or 2 Swedes.
Yes.
Because there's a portrait there in that book of a Swede who reaches a fairly high level. He's director or something. And being director is next to the commissioner, isn't it?
Yeah, the next is general director. And
then you're up to, and he's very accurate described. That is the type of person who could reach that level, being a Swede.
Did you have the feeling that you can imagine that this is really a Swede?
I really, not just imagine, I was a Swede. And I suppose, have people said that, oh, that Italian, that's just how they are. And that Greek woman with the ambitions, that's exactly what they are like. Was that did that matter a lot to you, that it should be so realistic that people could recognize even their national features, so to say?
I'm happy that you say that the Swede in my novel seems to be really a Swede. I like that. And it is a real interesting dialectic which I observed in the institutions of the European Union, especially in the Commission, less in the European Council. The European Council is the complete, we can speak about that if you're interested. But the European Commission, which is the institution which is trying to make the common policies, is showing a very interesting dialectic in the sense that the civil servants from all over Europe are showing in a almost, was heißt übertrieben,
exaggerated
way, national cliches. Yeah? The Italian civil servant is very Italian, yeah? For example. Or, more concretely said, as we imagine in our cliches an Italian, yeah? The Germans and so on. But at the same time, it's a game, it's fun. Yeah? At the same time, they all are showing that they superated their real national patriotism or national identity.
Because that's the
they say,
that they say in sign really.
Yeah, they say, yeah, it's mentality. It's mentality. I described in the novel the cyclic group. Yeah, that's true. I observed it. I had a lot of chances to see it really. Civil servants in Brussels, they have a cycle group, bicycle, yeah? And they are coming from all over Brussels, and they have certain ways where they go with bicycle to the commission building. When you start as a civil servant, in the European Commission, then you get certain informations, and for example, they say, do you need a cyclic training? I said, why do they need? And so yeah, because if you want to go with bicycle to your job, it's better you learn how to go with bicycle in Brussels, because there are dangerous streets and less dangerous streets and so on. And then they learn it. And the funny thing is, when then the civil servants go with bicycle to their job, the Germans do it differently.
How? Differently?
With professional cycle clothing, what is it? Funktionswäsche.
Funktionskläder.
Yeah. And very fast and so on, and then they are the unique. In the commission building, there are showers for the civil servants. The Germans are the unique using the showers because they are very. And the Netherlands, they go with their grandmother bikes, very, and so on. And I have seen it, and it is fun, but they are laughing by themselves about it. Yeah? And they never would say, I have in my institution to defend national interests. Yeah?
Really?
No, they don't do. In the commission, not. In the council, yes. And I give you a very interesting example which I have seen and which gave me a lot to think about it. When there was the Greek financial crisis, the budget, and you remember, yeah? And the Germans, especially the Germans, made the rules to come out of this crisis, and they said, you have to destroy your education system, you have to destroy and to make cuts on your social system, and the hospitals are too expensive, you have to make a cut, and then you can pay your debt. This was the German financial minister,
Schäuble.
Herr Schäuble. You remember this. And when this happened, I've been there, in the commission, the German civil servants were going very shy and very with bad feelings they were ashamed. They were going with very ashamed through the corridors. And then this is Berlaymont, yeah, commission. Rue de Loire. On the other side there is the European Council. And the European Council, they are defending national interests. The Germans were going to the corridors, Deutschland, Deutschland. Yeah? This was a difference. These are two completely different institutions. They are in completely contradiction to each other. And if you are really interested in European politics and in the development of Europe as a whole, you know, Commission is your friend and Council is your enemy. And the problem is that in national newspapers, I'm absolutely sure as well here in Sweden, national newspapers only tell you how national politics is defending in the European Council national interests against your real interests in the European Commission. And this is the problem. And I try to tell it, this is not an essay, I tell it on the example of the real lives of civil servants, of people living in Europe, how it interferes in their life, if you know it or not. A lot of things happens in your life because of these decisions, and you don't even know it. And this I try to tell.
And you did it well. We have to go to the second book. It's going to be a trilogy, isn't it?
Yes.
This is the second part, and it took you 4 more years, or 5 more years.
You can read the books one separated to the others without knowing the others.
This book is called The Enlargement, which has been a big issue. Sweden was very much in favor of enlargement because it made the soup thinner and not so dangerous anymore. Then the English left, and we didn't have any friends of thinning the soup. So enlargement has basically stopped, and this is a novel about how it stopped, you can say, basically. The story goes that France and Holland have given their veto against Albania. Albania has a new head of government, and he won the election because he promised to make the country a candidate country, candidat land. And now the French and the Dutch are stopping him. So he has a wonderful guy working with him, a poet. Dangerous to have a poet as one of your advisors, but this poet, Svante Weyler, comes up with the idea, let's threaten them. Let's tell them what if they don't accept us as a candidate country. So he tells this ex-basketball player of head of government to say that, pick up the helmet of Skanderbeg. Skanderbeg was a medieval hero in Albania, and he had a very funny helmet. It was firstly a normal helmet and then a goat head on the top of it. And it is put on view in a museum in Austria. And this poet says, put that on your head and tell them, I am the head of all Albanians. Not just Albanians in Albania, but of all Albanians. That'll scare them up. So they start with this idea. And then the story goes that both the helmet in Vienna gets stolen and the replica that the head of government lets somebody do, it gets stolen, and it develops and develops. So that's sort of the basic story with a lot of...
It's not that complicated.
It's a lot of side stories. But the basic story is that it's a novel about Europe a Europe that wants to shut the door and a Europe that doesn't want to let anybody else in. How come you choose this as the topic of your second novel? Why this theme on Europe? Because you're such a pro-European guy, and then you basically give us 650 pages of why it doesn't function anymore. At least not for Albanians.
I love and I defend the European idea. And I criticize consequently the status quo and the way how it is managed or not even managed today. And when I composed the trilogy, the first novel, I said I want to in the first novel I want to show the center, the Brussels. Yeah? What are these civil servants, these obscure phenomena? Nobody has an idea what they are doing, or they are doing some complete crazy things without knowing the reality, and they are thousands and thousands of crazy persons. I wanted to show the reality. By the way, the European Commission has less civil servants for organizing the whole continent than this city for organizing the city. You should think about this.
You're talking about Stockholm?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a fact. Okay. But in the second novel, I wanted to go from the center to the periphery, and I wanted to show the countries which are very, very intensively pro-European, who want to come inside, who want to enter the European Union. And I wanted to show, but always told along the real life of people, the contradiction to members of the European Union, which are anti-European, for example, Poland. Yeah? And I thought it's very interesting that Poland is member of the European Union and is breaking European law day by day, and Albania is not member of the European Union, but is implementing European law to get fit for getting member. Yeah? And I thought that's very interesting, and so I tried to tell it, what it means for the people, the hopes and for the daily life. And for example, in Poland, you can win elections only when you say, I will defend our national interests against these guys there over there in Brussels. Then you win the election. In yeah, it's the government. Yeah, but you win the elections with this message. In Albania, you can win elections only when you promise, I will lead Albania into the European Union. If you don't do so, you will never win elections. This is very interesting. This is very interesting. And this was the reason why I went there. I took a flat in Tirana. I started to have what we could call daily life. It's for me always the base of my research and of my way to start telling the reality. And it happened that when I was there, exactly in this time, happened the veto of Macron against Albania. And I had it on this day, on this evening, on the next day, I had the reactions. I had already friends and contacts, and I have seen how they reacted. This was very, very interesting.
Why did Macron put his veto against Albania?
Because it's very easy. Politics are sometimes happening more primitive than you can imagine. You always think there is something you don't know. No, it is. You have to say, what is the most primitive reason, and then you are nearer on the reality. Yeah.
You start out with that.
Yeah. Sometimes you are right when you suggest the economic reasons or the lobbying of big economic interests and so on. But sometimes it's real simple. Macron had no idea what is the Balkan. He's not interested in the Balkan. France never was interested in the Balkan. France is
a slight interest in Serbia.
Yeah, but France is basically interested in a North American where they had the colonies.
North African.
What did they say?
North American.
North Africa.
Well, they had colonies there as well, but I think you meant North Africa.
North Africa, where they had the colonies and Mediterranean situation and so on. That's very interesting because they never look to the Balkan, but the Balkan is always looking to Paris. Yeah?
All Albanian intellectuals were trained in Paris, weren't they?
You can't become president, premier minister, anarchist, dictator, or important artist in Albania without having studied in Paris. Enver Hoxha studied in Paris, yeah? For example.
So they are good.
But Macron was not interested in, and he had two reasons for his veto, as he said in the first interview. He said, it is a small country, less than 2 million inhabitants, and then they get a commissioner as a member.
It's not fair.
Yeah, and France, this big France has one commissioner. Every member state has one commissioner, as you know. Yeah, and he said it's completely crazy that this little country gets one commissioner, and the unique thing I know from this country is the mafia. Yeah,
that's what he said.
He said, yeah. And 1 week or 2 weeks later, Angela Merkel called him and said, didn't you know, did no one of your cabinet inform you that Albania has the biggest copper mine of Europe, and the German industry needs it. Yeah? This is politics, yeah. And I try to tell it, and then happened something what never happened before. A veto in the European Union is like a law. It's very, very difficult to put it away. The veto against Turkey, for example, is now 16 years old. And I don't see a chance to, yeah, and I say it's okay. Yeah. Albania, the veto against Albania was away after 2 weeks, after a call of Angela Merkel.
And then we have to talk about this idea of the head of government, this greater Albania. Yeah. Maybe we don't have a reason to be so afraid of a greater Albania. There are other greater countries in the region that we should be afraid of. Greater Hungary, above all. A greater Romania would be all. We're talking about revisions.
Yeah, but basically, this is a danger for the region.
Yeah, yeah. It's a danger because it means revision of borders, which is
exactly
the biggest taboo. Yeah. Opening borders or making borders not so important is one thing, but the revision of borders is an absolute taboo since the Second World War. Is that why you choose this idea to have them? To make them afraid of these kind of things, because there are Albanians. There are more Albanians outside Albania, in Albania, in Kosovo, in Macedonia, in Greece, and in so many other countries.
There are more Albanians living not in Albania than in Albania, and this was the idea. Yeah. If they don't want us, we can show that we are bigger, and then it is a dangerous situation on the Balkan, which is always dangerous since 200 years, always this dynamite region. Yeah? And this is an example for what I call, I don't know if you see it the same way, but I call it the most dangerous political reflexes we see in the contemporary times. The reflex of when you can't go on with real politics, you make signals of symbol politics. And you try to move the heads of people with symbols. Yeah? And nobody in Albania, in the government of Albania, really had the idea or the wish to make a great Albania with a part of North Macedonia, with the Kosovo, with Montenegro, where Albanians are living. Yeah?
Neither in your novel nor in reality.
No, in reality. But if you make the signal, we could try to organize it. Yeah? If I crown myself with the helmet of Skanderbeg, the national idol of Albanian unity, and all Albanians in the world now have to follow me, and it doesn't matter in which country they are living, then you have a burning Balkan. And this was the idea of the cabinet of Edi Rama, of the Prime Minister of Albania. And he said, okay, when we make this symbol, let's see how they react in Brussels. If they are really interested in having these problems in a problematic zone anyway, yeah, even bigger problems. And
how did they react to his actual idea?
No, the two things: the danger of trying to get great Albania, big Albania, and the fact of the copper mines. It changed the game, yeah, immediately, very, very fast. Yeah.
So it worked. The idea worked.
It worked. But it is not. For me, it's a big metaphor for the reality in all our countries, because I see in Austria, in Germany, in Italy, in all European countries, I see politicians unable to organize solutions for the most important problems and crises we have now. So they react with symbol politics. And this is dangerous. This is really dangerous. If you have problems in Austria and you say, the problem are the immigrants, then you produce two new problems. You produce the problem that you can't solve the original problem, and you produce the problem of a society full of hate and contradictions. Yeah? And you can observe it in all European countries, the problem of symbolic politics. And the story with the helmet is a funny version, which I used in my novel.
You've written a lot of essays and books on the European questions, the different questions. And I know that you have this idea, and you said early on in our conversation that nations are basically dissolving in our time. Yeah. That's one trend, and you can see within the union anyway. But then on the other hand, it's pretty obvious that there's a rise of nationalism. How do you get these two pictures together? On the one hand, borders not meaning as much as they did, and on the other hand, the rise of nationalism and the rise of nationalistic populism as well.
Yeah. Thank you for using this phrase, one hand, the other hand, because as I heard, the nails of the hands are growing after the death of a person. And this is what now is happening with nationalism. Yeah.
So you see nationalism as a dead idea, what we experience
It is a dead idea. It is, objectively. There is no reason to think or to believe in that a sovereign nation can resolve only one of the actual crisis problems and so on. No problem will stop on the border of Sweden and say, okay, no, Sweden, this is such a nice country, and we don't want to make a problem. We make problems only in the rest of the world. This doesn't happen. Yeah? It will not happen. And the unique chance to manage the problems we are confronted with is common politics, firstly in the European Union, and then globally. That the epoch of post-nationalism began is evident when you just remember the word globalization. What is globalization? Globalization is the breaking of all national borders, the breaking of all sovereignty of national states, and the ignoration of every trying of resolve global problems in a local situation. It's impossible. And now we have the situation that big nations still believe that they can organize it with military power to save their markets, their territories, and their sovereignty. But small countries, not even in this sense, even Germany and France are small countries, have no chance. So the unique chance is Europe. And this is very interesting. Globalization is happening. And it is, as the name says, it is global. And Europe has an asset. Europe is the only continent in which I would take the okay, thank you. We have the choice to suffer globalization or to manage globalization. And I think if I give you the choice, I know your answer. And Europe is the unique part of the world, the unique continent, which has the advantage that 60 years ago, because of completely different reasons, this continent decided to organize a post-national politics and so on. So, if Europe would realize this, we are the vanguard, and United States are vintage. The situation, it's just a thing in our heads. The situation would be completely different. And then we only would have to take it serious what began 60, 70 years ago in Europe. We had to take it serious. We had to correct the system contradictions that the national states leaders have the last decision about European politics, the European Council. If we would say, okay, the Commission has to decide, the Parliament, we give the Parliament all rights. We vote for an European Parliament, and it had the chance to make a legal state for the whole continent.
I get
The situation would be completely different.
Listening to you, I get the feeling that your optimism stems from the fact that we are on the right side of history. It seems a little bit like when I was a young man.
I'm not optimistic because I see the system problems and the system contradictions, and I see the development of the renationalization of the member states, and I see the greed of being member of the NATO, and instead of developing an European security and defense system. I don't know what is better to be a member of a system in which the United States decides and so on. Fastly, I understand it. If you want to feel more secure tomorrow, it is easier to become NATO member. But in the perspective, it's nonsense. Anyway, I see all these things. And I am optimistically only in this sense. I'm optimistic that it will not happen what I fear.
And you fear, what is it you fear most?
The end of any European dream and misery and a situation in which the idiots of today, tomorrow will say this might not happen anymore, if you understand what I mean.
I understand what you mean. Wow, you gave us a lot of things to think about. Our time is...
That's my job.
You are planning a trilogy. That's the center, this is the periphery. Are you coming to Stockholm next? Something between periphery and center? The third part will take place here. You seem to know how many civil servants we have in the city. What else do you know about us?
No, I will not come back to Stockholm because it's a cold city with... I have nothing against cold cities as long they have smoker lounges in the inside of buildings.
Well, then skip us. What's the third? What's in the plan for the third one?
I will not tell you now, but there's no need to come back to Sweden. I always like to come back to Sweden to visit my friends and all these interested people. But in the sense of European Union, why should I blame Sweden breaking European law? I guess you don't even know it. Did you know it? No.
Are we breaking European law?
Yes.
When?
Yeah.
When and how?
In the Maastricht criteria is fixed that in a certain constellation of economic and other parameters, you have to participate on the common currency, on the euro. And when England said we don't want it because we don't understand the decimal system, we are going with our cars on the wrong side of the street and all these things. And when England said, so we don't understand euro, we opt out. Sweden said, this is a new interpretation of #MeToo. Yeah, they said, not with us, we don't want. Based on the contract of the European contracts, Sweden is breaking the contract, but this is very interesting, and this is why I'm such a furious critic on the status quo. If Malta would have said that, they had an enormous problem. But Sweden is bigger, Sweden is more important, Sweden is... it's better not to have problems with Sweden, so Sweden could stay with the crown. But it is breaking European law. And it's funny.
Apart from that, how is Sweden regarded in Brussels and and from your point of view, an Austrian point of view? How are we doing? How are we seen in Europe? Good Europeans, bad Europeans, coward Europeans?
Very. Sweden has Swedish civil servants have an excellent image. For me, as an Austrian, in this case, Sweden is a kind of paradise of utopia. I remember when I grew up, there was the Chancellor Kreisky. Kreisky was in the Nazi in Swedish exile, and when he came back and when he became Chancellor of Austria, he always said, "We have to reach the level of Sweden." Sweden was the telos of history, yeah, and this is in my mind, yeah, and the moral superiority. I love everything except the smoking problem.
It is said, I've read somewhere that Sweden is a very popular party when it comes to negotiations because Sweden never takes a position ahead of the negotiation. Is that true? We enter the room and look for the others, see where they stand or sit or lie? Is that something you've heard too?
As long as Sweden, neutrality, Sweden, Austria, and this was a combination which long time worked very well in negotiations of contradictional positions. But this is now ending because of the evident fictionality of Austrian neutrality and of the Swedish wish to enter NATO. So this changes a lot in the game. Yeah? But I'm not interested in. I'm interested in the question: how can we come nearer to a real common Europe with a common legal state, common chances for all Europeans, with an identity which is rooted in the region where you're born and where you grew up, and at the same time proud of this Vanguardia project, of the European Peace Project. I'm too old to see it in the fulfilling.
But you're still hoping for it. Thank
I
you.
would like to have a nicer, a more optimistic final point. Yeah.
You want to sing a song? You sang a couple of songs on the European issue, European question. We still remember.
Yeah, thank you very much.
3, 4 verses of it. Thank you, Robert Menasse, and thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you.